Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. It was late, the kind of night when the house feels quieter than usual and the sound of a ticking clock suddenly matters. The soft hum of the fan in the bedroom barely touched the warmth in the air. I was wearing his shirt, Al's favorite one, actually. A loose, old gray cotton tee that hung on me like a memory I didn't want to let go of. It still smelled like him, clean, warm, and just a little bit of that woodsy cologne he always wore. I hadn't meant to stay up waiting, but sleep didn't come easy when my heart was full of questions. Al walked in without a sound, his keys quietly dropped on the side table. His eyes met mine, and I could see something in them, tiredness, maybe, or something deeper. He didn't say anything at first. Just stood there, watching me like he was trying to remember how to speak after a long silence. Then he smiled, slow and real, the kind of smile that made me forget everything we hadn't said in the past week. He walked over, his hand brushing against mine, light as a whisper. The tension between us was gentle but thick like a soft thundercloud. Al leaned in, his fingers reaching for the edge of the shirt I was wearing, his shirt. He didn't pull. Just touched it, slowly, as if asking without words. I felt my breath catch. Everything around us, the soft light, the warmth, the quiet, seemed to fold into that moment. But then, just as the space between us turned electric, I whispered, "No, it wasn't sharp or cold. It was soft, almost loving, but firm." He stopped. His hand froze. His eyes searched mine for a second, maybe wondering if I was angry or just unsure. But I wasn't either of those. I just needed him to hear something first. Something I hadn't had the courage to say yet. Because this story isn't just about love, it's about timing, trust, and the little things that make two people fall in love all over again after years of knowing each other. It's about how sometimes even in marriage, especially in marriage, you have to pause and listen. That's what this moment was for Al and me. A pause. A heartbeat waiting to be answered. And just as he opened his mouth to speak, to ask, to explain, maybe to laugh off the moment, something happened. A noise outside. A sudden knock at the door. We both froze, the tension in the room shifting again. Not just romantic now. Something more. Something unexpected. Want to know who was at the door, and what changed after that? The knock came again, sharper this time, like whoever was outside wasn't planning to leave until someone answered. Al glanced toward the door, his brows tightening just a bit. I felt his hand slowly pull back from my side, his touch gone like a pause that lasted too long. Neither of us moved for a moment. The air in the room had shifted. Whatever was about to happen between us had been cracked open by that sound, and now something else was slipping in. He finally stepped away and muttered, "Stay here," his voice low, calm, but alert. I nodded, pulling the oversized t-shirt tighter around myself like it could shield me from whatever was waiting outside. The hall light flicked on as he moved toward the front door. I followed, just far enough to watch him without being seen from outside. It wasn't fear exactly, it was more like a strange pull in my chest, a twist that said this night wasn't going to end the way I'd thought. While Al checked the peephole, my mind wandered to the past few weeks. We hadn't been fighting, not exactly. But something had changed. We were still laughing, still sharing space and late-night talks. But we hadn't touched like we used to. Not like this. That shirt I had on, his favorite, was the first real moment of closeness in a while. I'd put it on hoping he'd notice. And he had. Just in a way I hadn't expected. He opened the door just a crack, enough to speak. I couldn't hear everything, only fragments. A man's voice. Urgent. Al's voice, lower now. Short replies. Tension building in his posture. The stranger wasn't a threat, not obviously, but he wasn't just a random visitor either. Al stepped outside and closed the door behind him, leaving me in the quiet again, heart racing, mind spinning. What was going on? And why did Al look surprised? I walked back to the room slowly, sinking onto the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of the shirt again, his shirt, and all the things left unsaid between us. Something was changing. I didn't know what yet. But deep down, I could feel it. The kind of shift that doesn't happen by accident. And when he finally came back inside, the look in his eyes told me everything wasn't going to be the same anymore. Al closed the door gently, almost too quietly, like he didn't want to wake the silence that had settled between us. He stood there for a second, not moving, his hands still resting on the handle. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. The air was thick again, but not with the same warmth from earlier. This time it felt colder, tighter, like whatever had just happened outside had slipped in with him. I stayed on the edge of the bed, watching him. Who was that? I asked softly, careful not to sound like I was demanding answers. But I needed them. Al looked down, exhaled slowly, then walked over to the chair in the corner of the room and sat, elbows on his knees, hands locked together. Do you remember Jason? He said finally. The name hit me like a sudden breeze from a door left open. Jason, Al's old friend from college. They were close once, but things got messy after a falling out years ago. The last I'd heard, they hadn't spoken in almost 3 years. What does he want? I asked, trying to read between the lines on Al's face. Al rubbed the back of his neck, his voice low. He's in trouble. Real trouble. He said he didn't have anyone else to call. I didn't ask too many questions. He's staying somewhere nearby. Just wanted to talk. Needed help. I stood up slowly, crossing my arms over his shirt. You're not telling me everything. I wasn't accusing. I just knew him too well. The way he avoided my eyes, the way his voice shifted just slightly. There was more. He mentioned something, Al said, looking up now. Something that didn't make sense. He said there's something I need to see. Something that connects to us. You and me. I blinked. Us? My chest tightened. Why would Jason have anything to do with us? Al looked like he wanted to protect me from the answer. But the truth was already creeping in. Maybe this wasn't just about Jason showing up out of nowhere. Maybe this went deeper, old secrets, unfinished conversations, things from before we ever got serious. I don't know, he admitted. But I need to find out. And I need to know, you're with me on this. His words hung in the room like a bridge waiting to be crossed. I nodded slowly, even though my stomach turned. I didn't know where this was headed. But I wasn't letting go of him, not now. As we sat in that quiet space, just a few feet apart but carrying a world of uncertainty between us, I knew the next days would change everything. Our marriage, our trust, maybe even the way we saw each other. But one thing was sure, we were standing on the edge of something real. And neither of us knew what was waiting when we stepped over. The night stretched on like it didn't want to end. I sat on the bed, watching Al pace quietly across the room. His shirt still hung loose on me, the fabric brushing against my legs with every shift, but it no longer felt like comfort, it felt like a question waiting to be answered. He was trying to piece it together in his head, I could tell. Whatever Jason had said was still echoing in his mind, and it had unsettled something deep. I need to meet him again, Al said suddenly, turning toward me. Tomorrow. He didn't tell me everything. But I saw it in his eyes, he's scared. And I think, whatever it is, it's tied to something I forgot. Or maybe ignored. I stared at him. Do you think it's something about us? About before we got married? Al didn't answer right away. That pause, that silence, was louder than words. He finally nodded, just once. My chest tightened. This wasn't about just a favor to an old friend anymore. This was about trust. About the kind of past that doesn't stay buried. He sat beside me, not touching, but close enough that I could feel his breath. I didn't think anything from back then mattered anymore, he said quietly. But Jason, he said, something's been kept from me. From us. He said I'd understand everything if I just show up. What are you not telling me? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Al looked at me, torn. There was a night, years ago, before we were together. A party. Something happened. Jason was there. I don't remember much, but he said it's all connected. Goosebumps crawled across my arms. It felt like we were standing at the edge of something too big to see clearly. I wanted to ask more, but a sudden buzz interrupted us, Al's phone, lighting up on the dresser. A text from Jason. Don't bring her. You need to see this alone. Al read it and looked at me, torn between protecting me and needing me. But I knew right then, this wasn't just his story anymore. It was ours. And whether he liked it or not, I was already part of whatever was waiting. The night was quiet again, but this time it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of quiet before everything changes. Al didn't say anything after reading the message. His fingers hovered above the screen like he was debating whether to reply or throw the phone across the room. I watched him, heart racing. The silence between us wasn't from a lack of words, it was full of all the things we were afraid to say out loud. I stood up, slowly, pulling the shirt down over my thighs and walking over to him. If you're going, I said, I'm not staying behind. He looked up at me, his jaw clenched. He said not to bring you. Yeah, and that makes it even worse, I whispered. Whatever Jason knows, whatever he's holding back, it involves me. I can feel it, Al. For a moment, I thought he might fight me on it. But instead, he gave a quiet nod. We didn't speak again while we got ready, just moved like two people walking through a storm, trying not to lose each other in the wind. Al slipped on his jacket, grabbed the car keys, and we stepped out into the heavy night. The roads were empty. Every turn felt like it was pulling us closer to something neither of us could name yet. Al drove in silence, his grip tight on the wheel. I watched him, every blink, every breath. I could see the fear underneath his calm. Not for himself, for us. When we pulled into the dim, cracked parking lot of an old auto garage on the edge of town, my stomach dropped. Jason was already there, leaning against a rusted truck, hood up like it was a shield. His eyes locked on Al's first, then drifted to me. And that's when everything shifted. You brought her, he said, almost to himself. Then louder, you really don't remember, do you? What are you talking about? Al said, stepping forward. What am I supposed to remember? Jason looked at me, and for the first time, I felt something colder than confusion. Recognition. He knew me. Not in the way friends of your partner do, but deeper. Like someone who had been part of something I never knew happened. You don't remember the cabin? Jason asked. 3 years ago. You and me. And her. I froze. That's not possible, I said slowly. I didn't even know Al then. Jason's face twisted. You were there. That night. You two were just strangers back then. But something happened. Something that brought you back together, and something that made you forget. The wind picked up around us, howling through the broken windows of the garage behind him. I looked at Al. He was pale now, his eyes wide. For the first time, I saw him scared. Not of Jason. Not even of what might have happened. He was scared of me remembering. Al's face had gone blank. He was staring at Jason like the words hadn't landed yet, or maybe they had, and he was fighting every part of his memory that didn't want to remember. I turned to Jason, my voice low but sharp. You're not making sense. I never went to any cabin with you. Jason stepped closer, pulling something from his jacket. A small photo, faded, edges worn. He held it out. Then explain this. I took it slowly, my hand trembling. It was a photo of 3 people, me, Al, and Jason, standing on a porch in front of a cabin in the woods. I looked younger. My hair was shorter. Al had his arm loosely around me, like we were comfortable, but not yet in love. My throat tightened. I don't remember this, I whispered. Jason nodded. Because that night ended with both of you unconscious. Something happened inside. There was smoke. You both collapsed. I got you out. Al's eyes finally shifted. His voice cracked. That's why I had that burn scar. I never knew where it came from. Jason kept talking, the words spilling out like they'd been buried too long. You both forgot. I didn't. I promised not to tell. But when I saw you together later, married, like it was fate, I realized it wasn't an accident. You were always meant to find each other again. That night, it bound you in a way even memory couldn't erase. I looked at Al. You think that's why we found each other again? Because of something we forgot? I don't know, he said softly. But I do know that I've never felt more sure about us than I do right now. It felt like the truth had shattered everything we thought we knew, but somehow, it had pieced us back together too. We stood there, surrounded by night and secrets, holding on to something more real than ever before. Then Jason said something I never expected. I lied, a little. I didn't just get you out that night. You said something before you passed out. Both of you. The same words. What did we say? I asked. Jason smiled sadly. Don't let me forget this love. And just like that, everything made sense. The wind had calmed now, and the night didn't feel so heavy. Al and I stood in silence for a while, letting the truth settle between us like dust after a storm. The photo still trembled slightly in my hand, but my heart didn't. It was steady now, as if some piece of me had finally clicked into place. I looked at Al and saw him differently, not because he'd changed, but because I remembered just how much we'd already survived together, even when we didn't know it. Jason stepped back, giving us space. His part in this story was complicated, but I saw the guilt in his eyes, guilt for keeping the truth, and for revealing it. I never wanted to break you too, he said quietly. I just wanted you to understand how deep this really goes. Al walked over to him and shook his hand, surprising both of us. Thank you, he said. For saving us. Back then, and maybe even now. We left the parking lot quietly, without any more words. The photo, folded gently, rested in my lap as Al drove. He reached for my hand, squeezing it, not too tight, just enough to say we were still here. Still us. Maybe everything that happened didn't rewrite our story, but it made the love feel fuller, more rooted. Like even when time and memory had tried to erase it, love still found a way back. Back home, I changed into one of my own shirts, but I kept Al's close, folded and resting on my nightstand. Not because I needed it for comfort anymore, but because it reminded me of something stronger than memory. Love that waits. Love that returns. Love that survives even the parts we forget. And before turning off the lights, Al whispered, I remember that night now. Just a flash. You were laughing, barefoot, and the sky was full of stars. I smiled. Let's never forget again. And with that, our story came full circle. Not perfect. Not polished. But real. And somehow, even more beautiful for it. So, if you felt something in this journey, drop a comment. Tell us what you think happened next. Would you want to see a sequel? Let's keep this story alive together.